Hello and welcome to our show, The Awakening, here on WGSN-DB, the Going Bold and Going Solo Network. The information and opinions expressed on this show are just that, the opinions of individuals speaking based on their individual personal experiences. They are not intended to diagnose and do not constitute professional advice or recommendations. So you know that pain, the stress, and the struggle that divorcing men and women go through? Well, there is a way to find peace and keep your sanity, all while assisting your attorney and the other professionals, saving you thousands of dollars through the process. My name is Tina Huggins. I'm your divorce coach specialist, divorce planning specialist, restorative family mediator, and conflictual co-parenting coach. And today we're graced with Kathryn Holland. Kathryn is a seasoned financial planner and has dedicated her career to empowering women during one of life's most challenging transitions, divorce. Kathryn knows from personal experiences that getting a divorce is like watching your house burn down one item at a time. For her, this job is not just about numbers. It's about rebuilding lives and helping people rise from the ashes. Her mission is clear: to provide compassionate guidance and practical solutions for women facing divorce. She firmly believes that financial empowerment is a crucial aspect of healing and moving forward through the divorce process. Whether it's understanding joint finances, understanding alimony, or securing a stable future, she's here for you to be your advisor. She's there when you need her as you're going through your divorce process. So welcome, Kathryn.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you very much. So, I kind of told you just before we got started that I remember going back through the notes and then reading your bio and setting things up for today. And your focus towards women, it makes me, I just kind of go back through my divorce, and I just so wish that, one, I had asked for help, and two, that I had had somebody like you there to walk me through the process, because my healing from all of that, because I literally, I had to walk away from everything because I didn't understand the mediation process, and left. Literally, he ended up with the 40 acres, horse property, most of my belongings and things like that. And I left with little knowledge about the finances and what I was doing as I moved forward. So it took me lots of years before I could get to here. And we talked just briefly beforehand that I focus my work towards men because men don't have that support, and what is so cool about being a female in this world is that if we raise our hand and we say, hey, I need help, the rest of us are all right there to help each other. And that, to me, it just, even talking about it, feels so much better than what I went through with my divorce.
Yeah.
So, Kathryn, can you kind of tell us what your experiences through your divorce were so that we understand how you got to this place?
I'm happy to do so. I do want to go a little bit back to what you were talking about in how women rally around each other.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know there are only 3 species that go through menopause?
I probably did not. I was trying to think of what they were. So
Yeah.
tell us.
So the orca, the elephant, and the human.
I
And
remember the orca.
what that means is that we go through this, and I've noticed I was sitting at a conference for CDFAs last week, and I noticed that most of us were women of a certain age who had kind of gone through divorce for the most part. And it occurred to me that the reason we go through menopause is because we are more valuable than just being reproductive. And what happens is that matriarch, or those women who've had these life experiences in all of these species, stick around to teach and help and support the younger set, which I thought was so cool.
That is kind of cool. It's kind of funny that you bring up the orca because I didn't learn that about the orca until literally last week. And I hadn't heard that about the elephant, but somebody else was telling me that orcas go through that. So I was kind of surprised when you bring that up. It's like, okay, where have I heard this? It was last week.
Yeah.
And we, I was talking with one of my girlfriends about how as females, we go through that mommying loving phase in our life, and then we go through the menopause and we become a different person just on the other side of that, more powerful, more capable. And I see lots of divorces happen just around that time frame just because of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Gray divorce is defined as divorce over the age of 55. And that is the only demographic of divorce that's still increasing.
Yeah, and I can see that. I mean, the majority of my clients, the people I talk to, are coming in around that time frame. And I talk to the younger people. Sometimes they'll come to me and they're thinking about divorce, and so we go back through that. I just had one guy that I have worked with for a month that thought that that's what he was going to want is a divorce for his specific reasons. And once we got through looking at where he was at, because he's in this time frame, right? He got a whole different vision of where he was, where he's at, and where he's headed. And as of just a couple of days ago, he says, I think we're going to work on this. So I'm super happy that sometimes we can get to that decision versus the divorce decision.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I've had that experience too, where once we've opened up the money situation and really discussed it and helped people figure out how to talk to each other, because everybody interacts with money in different ways, mostly because of the way we were raised. And that can be because money is the top reason people get a divorce. If you can fix the communication, sometimes the marriage does last. Yeah, I tell people, you don't go to marriage counseling to save the marriage. You go to marriage counseling to figure out what you want. And sometimes it's save the marriage and sometimes it's not. And it's the same with what we do.
And it's interesting, I'll have people tell me when they start in to that process, they'll come to me shortly after they've gotten into the process of marriage counseling. And they're like, this isn't going to work. I don't want it to work. They're just kind of forcing me in. And it's like, well, don't look at it that way. The communication and this, I work in high conflict. So communication's almost nil and should be nil in most cases. But if you can get through the point where you can start communicating, even if you're separating, you're communicating. That's going to save you thousands of dollars as you move forward through a divorce process.
Yeah.
If you choose to have that conflict, like most of my clients are in, then your divorce is going to last longer. If it lasts longer, it costs more. And it's just not where you want to be when you start moving forward. So you're right, that communication is huge and very important.
Yeah. The other thing I do, and I totally took this off topic and I can go back to your question, but I like to have all of my clients read or listen to Mel Robbins' new book, The Let Them Theory.
Mm.
Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I am. I
Yeah.
haven't read the book yet, but I am familiar with what she's got in the book. She talks about it a lot in her
Yeah.
podcast.
It really helps people focus on what's important and just let go of what's not important to what we're trying to do. So yeah.
Very,
Yeah.
very
So
accurate.
yeah, it's amazing. It
Mhm.
changes a lot of the outcome. Just is not finding some way to get through this harmoniously, because divorce, nobody should win at divorce. Everybody should be okay.
Yeah. Definitely. And that's where, in my case with my clients, they're usually divorcing somebody who's been abusive. And, the key word out there is narcissist. And we can't diagnose somebody as a narcissist, but I refer to them as narcissistic. And, that word fits with all of us at times. We can all be narcissistic. But in the case with my clients, that other person is just mean and does everything they can to slow the process down, not do what they're asked to by the courts, and they just create so much more conflict as they move through that divorce process. And that takes us back to, that communication. If we can get, like my side, my clients, to communicate short, informative, factual, and friendly type things, then we've got boundaries set and things can be more smooth through that. And, as I'm talking, I see these numbers kind of go up in front of my face. I am so glad that there's people like you out there because I'm numbers dyslexic. So if I'm writing 32, it usually comes out 23. And so being able to communicate with somebody that can see the numbers and work with them and understand the numbers is so important. In fact, I just did a post about that today.
What was the post? Where are you posting?
Well, it was about property division. And so at the end of that post, and I have the video aspect on TikTok and Facebook, and then I have the written outline of it on LinkedIn today. But at the end of that post, I'm talking about how important it is to talk to a financial professional about specifically the splitting of retirements because when I first started learning about things, I didn't understand, like I told you back in the day, I didn't have an understanding of finances. So retirements and how they're put together and when the taxes come out of them was something I didn't even understand. And obviously, as we get ready to separate our retirement specifically, there's different types of retirement accounts, and what one person may get may be more than the other person, even though they're the same amount, but being able to use that money is
Yeah.
different in each type.
Yeah. Yeah. It is very important to look at your settlement from a tax equivalent perspective, for sure.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
$100,000 of retirement money is different from $100,000 cash,
Yes, definitely. And
depending.
I have a client that I work with occasionally who she took $120,000 of a retirement versus the cash because she thought she could get it all at once, not knowing that she was going to have to pay so much of that back in taxes to be able to even use the money.
Yeah. Yeah. That's tough. That's tough to learn at that point in your life where it feels like you're constantly being kicked. And now here's just another big kick to the gut.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. And especially I would also encourage people to consider a divorce financial professional, because a lot of financial professionals and planners, they're good at what they do, but they don't understand how it interplays with divorce, and how they probably understand all the different rules, but they don't work with them on a regular basis in the context of divorce. For example, 401ks. I see people take loans against their 401k for the buyout if they need to, and then they also split the 401k. And if you're not paying attention, that can result in a withdrawal and a penalty from the IRS, because your 401k loan, you're only allowed to take up to half the value of the 401k. And if when you split it, it brings your loan to more than half, it automatically triggers a distribution if you don't have money to cover that cash. And just little surprises like that are the things that we're trying to help people navigate. Because again, divorce feels, so I like to say it's very dramatic when I say divorce feels like you're watching your house burn down one item at a time. But the reason I say that is because that's what it felt like when I was getting a divorce. I felt like I was standing on the front lawn watching people drag my couch out and set it on fire, and you sit there and watch it burn. And then they go in and they grab the wedding album and drag it out on the lawn and set it on fire, because that's what you're doing, is you're looking at things and how to divide it. And it's just so painful already. We don't need to add nasty financial surprises to the mix as well.
Right. And, like I talked about this client that says that they're thinking about that they can work on their marriage. That was, I don't know how many times I probably told him in our meetings over the month that divorce is the worst that you will go through. It's the worst thing that you've been through to this point. And I know you think you want that, but before you get to that, you've got to realize how much there is here that you're going to be going through. And I would never recommend a divorce to anybody that could fix their relationship. Now, my clients are in abusive situations, and of course, I recommend divorce yesterday. They need to be safe. We need to feel safe. And, backing up into my divorce, I can say that I am in a much better place today than I would have been had I stayed in that relationship, if I'd have lived through it, because I don't know that I could have allowed my life to go on with the way things were. And no matter how much work that we did with therapists, it just seemed to get worse and worse. And so for me, it was worth going through that. But I'll be honest, it took me 15 years to get on my feet because I didn't ask for any help.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was the same way. I was so angry and ready to leave, and I just wanted out. And so I gave up so much because I was operating on high emotion.
Yep.
And that's where professionals come in, is they help you, and you can't just turn off those emotions. You can't. We're humans. Like, we're feeling, thinking, like creatures. And so having somebody who's stepping back from those emotions to help you make those decisions in any capacity, whether it's a divorce coach or a mediator or a lawyer, that is what's the most valuable part, is saying, well, you can deal with those emotions and I'll deal with the facts, and we'll come together and make it all work.
Yeah. And, I don't, when people are thinking about divorce, I don't recommend an attorney right off the bat. Because in the case, especially with my clients, they, one, either think they're divorcing a narcissistic person or they are divorcing an abusive narcissistic type person. And if I work with them for usually sometimes even just 2 weeks, I can tell you what type of lawyer they're going to need for that, situation. And I help them get their foundation laid before we go to the attorney, which saves them a lot of money right there. And then the attorney gets this well put together paperwork and has the finances pretty much so all together for them when they start. So the attorney now gets to do the legal job that they have trained and love to do. And they don't have to deal with the emotions. And I know you, partly because you came from all of this emotional stuff. So you make a choice to help your clients deal with their emotions. And that is what we need probably the very most as we're going through this. And of course, when you've got money there, if you don't know how to do that, you don't understand the retirements like I didn't, and then you're in a mess. Because when I left, I literally left with some clothes, a few pieces of furniture, um, some all my teapots, because I collected teapots, and I had some stuff from childhood and my car. That's what I left with. He ended up with the horse property. A lot of my family heirlooms are still there. And this was 22 years ago. And he ended up with the 40 acres, the house, a beautiful home. And I didn't get one thing. I took credit card debt with me, and he didn't have any credit card debt. All he had was that house.
So how do you feel about that looking back on it now?
Oh, I made the biggest mistake of my life. Had I known that a mediator was not there to make things fair, they're only there to broker a deal. Had I known that, I would have I would have made different choices. And he wouldn't have the house, which is kind of a sad thought. But it would have been sold and the money from that house would have been split between us, and I wouldn't have taken 15 years to get on my feet. I would have had the financial understanding that I didn't have. And that's the major piece that was missing back then.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so tough. But now, do you think that you are a lot stronger for having spent these 15 years rebuilding?
Definitely. And it's what helps me to be able to help the clients that I'm working with. I have that. And, I talk about the fact that I focus my work towards men. I watched my dad. Um, I, I pulled him out of a hospital because he was almost murdered by his second wife. I mean, she had shot at him several times. And in this one specific incident, she had driven over him with a dually pickup truck. And men see things differently. Well, all of us do. When we're in the middle of that abuse, we don't even know it's abuse. It's just turmoil and it hurts. It emotionally kicks us into the corner. And my dad, even to this day, cannot use the word abuse in a sentence. And we had to get him out of that situation. I mean, at one point, I proved to him that she was going to get away with murdering him because she had had the cops called on him enough to to basically prove that he was being abusive to her. And the cops, because I had worked with them, they would call me and they'd say, "Tina, we know it's not your dad. We know, but he won't do anything. He won't say no. He won't say he didn't do it. He won't say anything."
Mhm.
So she was setting him up to murder him and get away with it.
Wild. Yeah, but it happens all the time.
Yeah, every day we talk about abuse, and one in every three women are abused. And that's just from the people that report, right? And then we look at the men, though, it's one in every four, and they report way less than the women do. Although we do hear of more women getting murdered by their ex than we do of men. There are men that get murdered, but there's more women. And I tell people all the time that the most dangerous time in any relationship is the moment you go to leave, whether that's in writing or whether that's you walking out the door.
Yeah. And then, as you say, the men don't have the support. See, I have this theory that we need to come up with a new term for feminine and masculine because it just connotes so much, but it is a good descriptor, but everybody has feminine energy and masculine energy. And it's whatever energy is channeling is going to work for or against you. And if we could figure out some neutral term for each of those so that when you're talking about it, maybe men would be more comfortable saying, this is an abusive relationship and I need to get out.
Hmm. Yeah. As you say that, I think you remember that my husband died about a year ago. So going back through that, he had so much maternal type energy. He was such a great dad. He loved his kids with all he had, and he did everything he could to protect those kids. And that's why he stayed in his marriage for so long, because she was extremely abusive to him. I mean, I had to do paper investigation for his attorney, reading through all of his emails that she had sent. I mean, just reading two or three of them would tell you that she was very abusive, but I read through hundreds of them, and it was just heart-wrenching. And then, we'll look at me. I come in, I was raised on a ranch, and I taught martial arts. I worked on a fire department. Was I worked with the sheriff's department, and so I did a lot of masculine jobs. So he and I, at some points in our days, I would be the masculine energy and he would be the feminine energy in our household. He loved to cook, and he was so sweet. And me, I was, opposite. But then the other parts of the day would be the total opposite of that.
Yeah. I don't know what that term is, but I keep wondering about it.
Yeah, that's I had never thought about that before, but that is kind of an interesting think about that.
Yeah. Just, yeah. Because we get so tied up in just the verbiage and the vernacular of things.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. I'm gonna back up into something you said about how important it is to get the right type of financial advisor. I never recommend just a financial advisor. Now, in this post that I put out today, I did kind of say that just because it was questions that you needed to ask, but it is more important to work with a divorce person, so a CDFA, Certified Divorce Financial Analyst, than it is to just work with any financial person, because you guys know the complexities. And that's a word that is very true when it comes to the numbers. There's so much complexities when we go to dividing things up.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually have a presentation that I give to financial advisors on why you should bring a CDFA in if your clients are getting a divorce. Because, you know, financial advisors all love to tell stories, just like doctors and everybody, when you're downloading your day around the drink to, what is it, the well. And when they find out I do divorce financial analysis, they love to tell me how great they were at helping their clients get divorced. And a lot of the times they tell me what they did, and I'm just like, ooh, buddy, that wasn't the right thing to do. And they don't know. They wouldn't be telling me about it if they knew it was the wrong thing to do. And so it's really a matter of, you don't know what you don't know.
Right,
And
right.
so actually I've recently pivoted out of doing my own wealth management practice. I still have my clients that I had before, but I'm just doing the divorce work and then referring those clients to other financial advisors once we're done, because the specialty is so important. And so if I can get financial advisors to understand that bringing me in isn't a threat to their business, I thought maybe we could save some bad decisions from being made.
Yeah, that would be a good deal. I sit in because I'll work with Vesta Divorce, and so they'll do different trainings throughout the year. And one of the trainings that I love to sit in is the one where we have the divorce financial analyst teach those classes. And for me, it's so important because as a coach, I want my clients to get the very best outcome for them. And not all of them are going to need a CDFA, but when they do, they do. And it's super important for them to understand how those complexities divide up. Because like started talking earlier, the the pots, even though you have those pots for retirement, they're not equal. And so somebody's going to get more money in the end if they're not divided properly.
And even if something to think about is, one person after the divorce is probably going to have a lower tax bracket than the other. And so you want to make sure you're considering that too when you're thinking about how they're going to use the money going forward. And yeah, and then other things, like some states still charge state tax on spousal support. I know it's not on the federal level, that's gone away, but on the state level sometimes, or other states have certain advantages to selling. When you sell your house over the age of 55, what are the homesteading laws there? And are you making sure that those protections are in place, and who gets those protections? And there's just it there's so many details to think about.
Yeah. So when my late husband divorced, was a horrible divorce aspect. But looking back about how everything got split up, they didn't have a CDFA in there. And of all of the divorces I've been involved with, that needed a CDFA really bad. But they spent $400 an hour on a tax accountant to advise them. I sat in on one of those meetings because I was doing the paper investigation side, and I was appalled. I didn't know enough about the numbers, but I was appalled. $400 an hour, and we spent 5 hours in that conversation, and not one dang thing got done. She went up and testified, and she wasn't considered a credible person to testify under that situation. So they divided up. They had 10 properties, and it was an equitable division. Some of the properties had to be sold because the wife totally wanted to destroy the whole thing. One of them flooded. She kicked renters out of another, so it sat there, and then pipes broke because they froze. And so there was 2 or 3 properties that got destroyed, and they had to sell, I think, 3 properties just to pay for the fix and the taxes and everything that she hadn't paid for 7 years. She hadn't taken care of taxes. And
Wow.
in the end, it still wasn't complete. He died before everything got finalized. So there was $50,000 that may end up sitting and staying with the receiver because of the way things ended.
Wow. Yeah. Well, and that's the abusive or narcissist, right? They have to have control. And if that control is them destroying something because now nobody else gets to enjoy it, that's what they'll do.
Yeah. And they don't care. It's, my dad always had this little saying, don't cut your nose off to spite your face. But that's what they'll do. They'll cut their right arm off just to make sure that they punish you for whatever else. Their right arm is not worth anything to them as long as they can punish you.
Yeah,
So difficult.
it is.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry that happened. You
Yeah.
can, sometimes you can claim marital waste or marital dissipation for stuff like that
If they know about it,
if they know about it. Yeah.
he doesn't know about it, and they didn't have a CDFA. And like I said, they had this very expensive CPA, and the CPA, especially now that I've worked with CDFAs, that CPA didn't do anything to help. And it definitely, I think it probably hurt more than it helped.
And if you were in a conversation with them for 4 hours, you probably paid for 6 or 8 hours because they also had to do the analysis.
Prep and everything else.
Yeah.
Yep. And it
Oh,
was, and that was just one meeting. I went in on that meeting. It was one of the last meetings they had. I don't know how many meetings they had before that. And it was kind of interesting because when I first came on, my late husband would say, "Oh, she's a highfalutin CPA. She's a special CPA." And it's like, well, but she was a CPA. She wasn't a CDFA.
yeah. Yeah, and that's another advantage to somebody who knows how to stay in their lane and will say, this is not my bailiwick and we need to get another professional, and I know the right professional for this.
Well, looking back over that, because at that point when I was helping him, helping the attorney and stuff, I wasn't trained. And looking back over that, everything that could go wrong went wrong with that. The attorney was definitely not the right attorney for that situation. He would work better writing, wills and things like that up, or helping amicable families get divorced, but definitely not in a high conflict case. That lasted 7 years. And he paid over $300,000 for that attorney. And then the paperwork comes out and nothing's done. And you can't make anything happen or get done. I'm like, at one point, he had to call the police so that he could drop her belongings off because she was refusing them. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that also brings up a good point in that an attorney, once we've got that stamp on the decree from the judge, considers their job to be done, and there's still a lot of work to be done.
Definitely, especially on the financial end.
Yeah.
And I just went through a divorce situation, and we're finalized, got the paperwork and everything, but now, everything's needing to be done, and we're 4.5 months past the divorce, and nothing on his side has been done. I had the female as my client, and nothing on his side's been done. Narcissistic people will do everything to slow everything down, right? So I had told her this process is going to be at least 9 months long to get 3 months worth of work done, because that's what they were given, was 3 months to get all of this stuff done. And
Mm.
and she says, but I can take him back to court after 3 months. And I'm like, well, yeah, you can, but the courts aren't really going to care too much. They're going to slap his fingertips and they're going to say, get it done. And 2 or 3 months later, it will get done. And that is, I mean, I've seen this 100 times already, where this happens. It's not, the judge doesn't want to throw the book at somebody unless they need it. And it just prolongs and takes a long time. But you talked about the attorney being done, and her attorney doesn't answer or return her calls, because technically that attorney can't do too much at this point. They can, write the paperwork to say that they're in contempt of court, and that's pretty much so it.
Yeah. It's tough.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then a lot of, and you'll be able to tell me what really should happen here, but a lot of my clients that come in, they've got several $1 million that need to be split up and or given to them, and it doesn't happen, and it doesn't happen. So now we're months later, and it's been sitting in the other spouse's account, gaining all this interest all this time, where now my client is losing all that interest, and it doesn't get written into the decree.
Yeah. Yeah, there are so many little details that need to be put into a decree that, yeah.
So what are some of those things that you see not making it into decrees that should make it in?
A lot of times, I mean, so we talked about the property transfers.
Mm-hmm.
If it's written by somebody who doesn't have a full understanding of that specific state's rules around homesteading rules, that frequently gets missed. A lot of mistakes I see made are with 401ks and pensions. Pensions are really tricky because everybody is different.
Mm-hmm.
When you are an employer and you go to set up a 401k, you get to decide all of the rules that you want in place within the parameters of what the Department of Labor will allow. And so some plans allow you to access the money before 59 and a half if you're 55. Some plans only allow a one-time withdrawal from that 401k if you're the divorcing spouse without paying that with that 10% penalty. Some plans will let you go to the well over and over and over again. Some plans require that you put in the divorce decree that in the event of your passing, this goes to the spouse. We miss out on life insurance. We miss out on making sure that the spouse has to provide proof that they've carried that life insurance. So we'd like to get life insurance if it was a stay-at-home spouse who's going to be struggling to get back on their feet. We like to get life insurance to cover that spousal support if the person who's paying it passes away. Because if they pass away, your spousal support disappears. So you get a life insurance policy for that.
Mm-hmm.
But if the spouse who's paying is the owner on that life insurance policy, there's nothing to stop them from changing the beneficiary from the ex-wife. So we want in the divorce decree they have to provide proof on an ongoing basis that they have not changed the beneficiary. Just
Yes.
little tiny details like that seem
Mhm.
like, well, it's just more effort to put it in there, but it is more effort until it isn't.
Yeah. And, I have clients that have children, and so I work on a lot of parenting plans with them. And just like these are things that I make sure my clients know. Make sure you got the insurance policy. So this client that I was referring to just a bit ago, she has that in the decree, but he took her name off of it already. She already can see that her name is off of it. Even though he's ordered to, if he would to die right now, she loses all of that money.
Yep.
And he hasn't given it to her. And that's what happened with my late husband, is where that $50,000, she didn't care whether she had it. She just didn't want him to have it. So
Yeah.
she was just going to leave it there for whatever. She was lying to the court. She was lying to him. And it was just all of the, I can't get that information from my tax accountant. So just kinds of
In
things.
instances like that, if you're buying a new insurance policy to cover spousal support, you can make the owner and the person paying the premiums don't have to be the same person. So
Yeah.
you
And
would make the owner of the life insurance policy the spouse who's receiving alimony. And then the spouse who's paying it does not have the right to change the beneficiaries.
that's the best way to go. That's
That's
usually
the
what
best
I
way to go.
advise. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so
But if,
many attorneys that don't know that, though,
yeah,
because you come in from the money side, being able to tell the attorney. And these are things that, attorneys don't mess with numbers. Attorneys don't mess with emotions. So we've got to have the right people in the right lanes, like you said earlier.
yeah.
So we're getting ready to come to the end here, Kathryn. So um, I know that all your contact information is going to be below this in the show notes, but can you tell people how they can get a hold of you?
Yes. So we are a somewhat irreverent firm. We're from California, so don't hold that against us. But the firm name is Cover Your Assets Divorce. And
I
you
love.
can find us at www.coveryourassetsdivorce.com. We have information on there. We have a podcast, and we have a link so you can book. We do offer a complimentary initial 30-minute strategy session. So you could go on there and book some time with either me or the other CDFA in the firm, and we at least get a couple questions answered.
And that would be super important. And so I myself am a certified divorce coach, meaning that I've been taught in the complexities of divorce, and I've lived through the divorce and the abuse aspect. And I've watched my own father and my late husband go through this type of abuse. So I can tell you that understanding that abuse is huge and most important for my end of the clients. So you can find me or get a hold of me through my email at coachtinalyn@gmail.com. That's CoachTinaLynn@gmail.com. And my website is divorcecoachspecialist.com. And on social media, I'm on Facebook under Tina Lynn Huggins, Huggins, LinkedIn under Tina Huggins, on Instagram under Divorce Coach Tina Lynn, and TikTok under Divorce Tina. So, Kathryn, can you give our viewers a last bit of advice here?
I think that the biggest mistake people who are going through divorce make is not taking the time to build up confidence for themselves or finding people who will help them with that confidence while they're building it. Because that is what you need to go into the decision making. And these decisions are going to affect you for the rest of your life. Don't do it emotionally, do it with confidence and clarity, and find the right person to help you find that confidence and clarity.
And yeah, so my advice for our viewers is that don't trust your financial information to come from somebody who doesn't understand divorce. If you're going to bring on an individual that's going to help you with your finances, make sure that they're a certified divorce financial analyst, because understanding that word complexity of the money and the separation of everything is super important. And we have just a couple of states, 3 or so states, that actually split up 50-50. If you have 2 houses, they just each one get one. But the rest of the states are equitable. And equitable states, which is technically more fair, in my opinion, need to have somebody who understands those divorce numbers. So make sure that you get the right person. So as we close, I can tell you that many people going through divorce, and we get to this place where we have suicidal ideations. And when we get there, we need to have help. We need to have help right here at this moment so we can have somebody help us back off that ledge. So please call the suicide or the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. Super simple, 988. It's the same number in Canada. Again, 988. Talk to somebody just so that you have a voice on the other end of that line, so that you feel a little better and can walk back off that ledge. Okay. In the Netherlands, you can reach that hotline at 113. Again, so that you're not alone. And if you are dealing with violence right now, call 911. It's the same number in Canada too. Get the police there and make sure that you press charges. That's your key out of that abuse. Don't drop those charges. Once you drop those charges, I can tell you that the abuse that happened prior to putting the charges on is going to possibly be worse after you drop the charges. You can also call 999 in the Netherlands and 112 if you're in the UK, so that you can get the police there and get somebody that you can press charges with. The domestic violence hotline is 800-799-7233. That number again is 800-799-7233. And I would like to ask you to please like, comment, and share so that this can help other people. And thank you so much, Kathryn, for being my guest today.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
Awesome.